So, I'm here in my New York apartment. You can probably hear the radiator that I'm unable to turn off, which is right next to my station in this little, tiny little apartment that I share with my partner. And I don't know if anyone is gonna watch this. I don't know how interesting this is to all of you, but it's interesting to me, so screw it. I'm going to kind of take you through every week an update on what I've been writing. I'm going to be writing a lot in 2024, hours and hours a day. I have 4 major writing projects lined up. I also am continuing to take classes at the Musical Creators Institute. Today, I want to talk specifically about a 10-minute musical that I've just finished writing this week. It's an adaptation of a short story called The Yellow Wallpaper. This is a famous short story from the 1800s. It's like a feminist horror story about a woman whose husband forces her on like a rest cure because of her postpartum hysteria. So he forces her to stay in this room with this ghastly yellow wallpaper, and she stays there for days and weeks and months on end, and she begins to hallucinate that there's a woman in the wall, trapped inside the wall, and she tries to get this woman out of the wall by scratching the wallpaper down. And it's like a metaphor for how she is trapped by the patriarchy and stuff. So I'm writing this with a collaborator of mine named Brooke Di Spirito, who is just an absolute genius, and I'm super, super excited to be working with her. I met her through the Musical Creators Institute where I'm taking classes. So I'm kind of going to walk you through the score. It's a 10-minute musical. We just submitted it to a 10-minute musical festival that's run by Theater Now in New York City called Sound Bites. So wish us luck for that. It's a little bit out there. It's very like avant-garde. So I kind of want to walk you through the score that I wrote for this piece and kind of explain some of my thoughts behind it and explain what my process was in coming up with all of this really, really weird stuff. So that's what I'm doing today. And again, ignore the radiator. You can probably hear it hissing in the microphone, and there's literally nothing I could do about that. So thank you for watching this, if you're watching. Let's dive right in. So we start with these 5 notes, which are kind of the most important notes in the show. Now, this theme, those 5 notes, B flat, D, B natural, C sharp, G, those are the 5 notes that make up this entire score, basically. The entire score is built around those 5 notes. And it's kind of a motif that is designed to evoke the feeling that this wallpaper design gives her. In the book, in the original like short story, she talks about, the narrator, it's told in first person, and she talks about how the pattern has all of these like curves that kind of go nowhere, and every time you think you are following one with your eyes, it disappears, and it's a really kind of confusing pattern. And so I tried to use these 5 notes that are very, very like dissonant with each other. We've got like a G major triad, but we've also got the B flat, which would be the minor third. So we've got a major triad with a minor third, and then we've also got this augmented fourth there. So we've got that tritone there, we've got this like major 7th there, these really weird intervals all over, and the way that it kind of like snakes down, a big leap, and then up a little bit, and then down again, kind of to me evokes the feeling of the wallpaper. And I wanted to make it especially dissonant at the start, and then at the end, no spoilers, you'll have to watch the whole way to see what happens at the end, but at the end I'm going to make it a little bit less dissonant, and I'll show you how I do that as well. So the whole musical is basically built around those 5 notes that represent the pattern that's trapping her, and the pattern that's trapping her represents patriarchy. Now we're going to get to a place where there's a lot of notes played quickly and out of time, and by the end of the show, as she begins to lose her sanity, you know, we get some weird time signatures. We get some sections that are completely played out of time. So I wanted to start with this very solid 4/4 beat here. The more steady we have the tempo at the beginning, the bigger contrast it's going to be at the end when things start falling out of time. So we have this like solid E flat minor tonal center and this solid 4/4 beat. And John, her husband, is talking over top of this, telling her, you know, it's perfectly normal for women to experience a slight nervous hysteria after childbirth. And so just rest in this room and it will vanish as soon as it comes on. And then she sings, oh, by the way, I'm not going to play through the entire score right now, but if you want to listen to it, you can do that on my website. There's a link in the description. So check that out. You can listen to the whole thing and then come back to this video and see the analysis of it, or watch the analysis first and then listen to it and hear all of the things that I've been talking about, however you kind of want to enjoy the dissection of this weirdness. Here we've got, again, the steady 4/4 the whole way through. Then here, this is the first time where we start getting this, that 5-note motif again. And it leads us into the line, this place makes me feel a little haunted. She's singing about how John is a very good physician. John is a physician. John is a very good physician. John is a practical man. This place makes me feel a little haunted. So it leads, the wallpaper motif leads us into the line, this place makes me feel a little haunted. Because what about this place is making her feel haunted? It's the wallpaper. So I just add in this little hint to the wallpaper. It's in the bass. It's not really noticeable. You probably don't catch it consciously, but there's an element of like, you begin to associate that sound, that tonal sound, with the haunting of the room, with the horror aspect of the story. And then every time she says the word, but John knows best, we get this chord. And John knows best. And that chord kind of comes to symbolize John knows best. It kind of comes back throughout the show as well. So we get this chord that every time John is saying something and John is saying how much he knows best, we always get that, like, it's kind of like an F flat major 7 chord without the third. And we get that every single time John is pretending that he knows best. John is acting like a know-it-all. Then, so we kind of have a repetition of the John knows best, blah, 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 John knows best, blah, 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 John knows best. And then here, we have our 2 A sections, and then here is our B section. So this is a kind of standard AABA song with, like, variations on each A section. And I've talked a bunch on the channel about AABA songs, so if you don't know what that is, check out a bunch of my other videos. And you should do that anyways, and subscribe to the channel. So this B section here, we get a little bit more, I want to say emotional. Up until this point, it's been steady, and there hasn't been a lot of harmony changes. The biggest harmony changes, we go from E flat minor to this, like, B flat minor, and back again. And then maybe there's one, like, D flat minor on the word haunted, and then we go back to the E flat minor. That's been the harmony so far. Here, we start getting a little bit more of a pop harmony, which kind of, to me, feels like she's opening up a little bit more emotionally about what she actually wants. We get this, like, G flat. I want to write in my journal, and then this A flat, but John says it's overwhelming. G flat again. My family, but John says it's a bad idea. I want to go downstairs, but John says even that's too exhausting. I want to spend my days out in the garden. Now, here we introduce the second very important motif. The wallpaper motif starts on this high B flat, snakes down in this really dissonant way, and ends on the G. So it starts on the B flat, snakes down in a dissonant way, and ends on the G. I wanted to make a motif that represented the opposite of that. If the wallpaper represents the pattern that is oppressing her, I want there to also be a 5-note motif that represents what freedom means to her. And so what I wanted to do was kind of flip the wallpaper motif around. We start on the B flat, go dissonant, and end on the G for the wallpaper motif. So for this freedom motif, which starts with the garden, I started on the G, and then I went up in a very consonant way, and then the highest note was the B flat. So that is like the garden motif, and that to me feels like the opposite of the wallpaper motif, with the same highest and lowest note. So here we introduce that theme. I want to spend my days out in the garden, out in the garden, where everything is green. And then we come back to that John Knows Best chord, and then we end with, John wants me to rest, staying inside, losing my mind, says it takes some time, soon enough I'll be fine, till then. Oh, I was just singing the whole thing in the wrong, I was just saying the whole thing in the wrong key, sorry. John wants me to rest, up there. Till then, this is all he'll allow me to do, it's all he'll allow me to do, just stay in the room, with the bars on the window and the paper on the walls. So now we start getting really dissonant. Look at that. These dissonant chords. And then up here, when she sings about the paper on the wall, look at what 5 notes come up. It's that same Yellow Wallpaper theme. So even though that wallpaper theme is really weird and dissonant and kind of has no structure or form to it, which is kind of the narrator's problem with the wallpaper, is that it has no structure or form to it. So it makes sense that the motif doesn't have structure or form to it. But even though it has no structure or form to it, I think that because I'm repeating it so much, the hope is that gradually you will start to find some sort of structure or form within it, or it'll start to feel familiar to the audience's ear. Here, she just sings one line. I'm glad my case isn't serious. And this is where we're kind of establishing this convention that we decided on. We kind of agreed on some rules for the score of this show. The first one was that Charlotte, our narrator, should never rhyme. She should never have an explicit rhyme in her lyrics. We felt like she wasn't in a frame of mind to be making that much sense with her thoughts. When a character is rhyming, it really feels like their thoughts are organized in a really clear-cut way, and Charlotte is not in that state of mind, so we didn't feel like it made any sense to have her rhyme. So we make sure that in the entire score, she does not have a single back-to-back rhyme, but she has a few rhymes that are spread out. So for example, in John Knows Best, you just heard, you have John is a physician, and then you have this place makes me feel a little haunted, blah, 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 and then you have John isn't one for superstition. So it's not a direct rhyme, because there are so many lines in between, but that's the only way we allowed ourselves to rhyme. So that's one of the rules. The other rule was that Charlotte is the only person in this show who's allowed to sing. The other two characters, John, her husband, and the housekeeper, Jenny, do not sing at any point. And when Charlotte sings, it's always her thoughts. She's always voicing her unvoiced thoughts. The characters cannot hear her when she is singing, but the characters can hear her when she's speaking. So this is a thought that she has. She feels like John knows best, so we get that John chord, that John knows best chord, and then we hear, I'm glad my case isn't serious. Then here we have the wallpaper song. Here I wanted to take a break from this like minor scary feeling and have a lovely like lullaby waltz, like the paper's hypnotizing her a little bit. And I felt like that was in some ways almost more creepy and scary than if, you know, it was constantly minor and dissonant the whole way through. So she sings this whole section in this very like lovely waltz, which is kind of scary in its own way. Then she's singing about the pattern, and then she sings, and this terrible yellow color, and we get this chord, which is made up of, guess what, 5 notes. So it has the feeling of the wallpaper, the color of the wallpaper. Then John comes in and starts talking, and we get the same rhythm from John Knows Best with that same chord. Then we have the waltz kind of builds a little bit. We get this right hand melody there. Loose-ended lines every day. That's a very important line. It's the trigger for what makes her start to go crazy is not looking at the wallpaper for a moment or an hour even, but it's looking at it every single day for weeks and months on end. So when that line comes up, to show you how important it is in a way, I have the harmony change. So we've been in E flat major this whole time. And now I have every day, which is that G flat from E flat minor. So we get minor on the word every day. Loose-ended lines every day. And then there's the Yellow Wallpaper theme again at the top of the piano. Then she says, don't those look like eyes? Pointing to a pattern on the wall. And that's the first time that we see that she's starting to maybe see reality in a way that is not entirely true, or not entirely truthful. Then we go into E flat minor here. Spiteful little spirals, no conventions, constrictions, constraints, yellow deceit, the paper lies. And this is the most dissonant thing that we've heard yet. We get these two chords, the paper lies. Because now she's kind of starting to lose her grip on reality because she's been staring at the paper for too long. So that's why we have this really dissonant interval and then this diminished triad. And we're going back and forth between those two notes, and then there's a tritone at the bottom, which is like the devil's interval. So it's this very dissonant sound, and then it's connected by the same wallpaper motif. Then we end with this like creepy music box waltz, again, all the way at the top of the piano as she says, "What is the paper hiding?" Here she begins to see the woman in the wall. It begins with this like rumble with the same wallpaper motif in the right hand. Something is stirring, something is moving, something is stirring there in the paper. Then we go into 5/8, which is a time signature that creates a lot of urgency because it feels like it should be a count of 4 or a count of 6, but because it's somewhere in the middle, it feels like you're always skipping a beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why can't you see it? Why are you sleeping? How can you sleep now? And then there is another stretched out rhyme. We have sleeping here, and then we have quick call the sheriff, quick call the sheriff. Something is scratching, something is clawing, something is reaching, and then we have this whole bridge section, and then at the end here we have something is creeping. So it's this, again, stretched out rhyme with sleeping, where the rhymes aren't right next to each other, so they don't quite make sense. The other thing I want to point out here is that we have this like very urgent 5/5 feeling. I did not play that well at all, but you know what I'm talking about. This. And then we go into 3/4, which is much more solid, and the harmony becomes much more solid too. Those are basically the chords that are being played here. They're a little bit spread out still, but they're basically the 4 pop chords for the first and only time in this entire show. And it's under the lyrics, every time that it tries to escape, the pattern chokes it again. And I think that's because those lyrics are really, really important to the emotional core of the show. Charlotte is envisioning that this figure inside the wall is trying to get out of the wall, and every time it tries to escape from the wall, the pattern in the wall chokes it and pulls it back. That, I feel like, is a projection of Charlotte's own feelings of being trapped in this controlling marriage, in this oppressive patriarchal society. And so there's something about, for a 21st century audience, when we use those 4 pop chords that are so familiar, when we give an audience something so familiar, it cracks them open emotionally. They because they're comfortable in the music, they relax a little bit, and everyone has emotional memories tied to some song with those 4 chords in it. Everyone has their own connection to that musical sound. So it's a really effective way to make people feel really emotional. So if you pick one specific moment in a score to give the audience those 4 chords that you know are going to make them cry, it really illuminates what is the emotionally important material in the text. So I think that this actually is arguably the most important emotional material that Charlotte sings, because it sums up her entire life and her entire struggle. So that's why I chose to use those pop chords and a more solid time signature. Every time that it tries to escape. In that moment. The other thing I want to point out about that section is this here. We actually have the garden theme in a different key now. It used to be in E flat major, but now it's in G flat major. But it is the garden theme. It's the same theme of freedom on the word escape. So that's also a little Easter egg. And then here at the end, something is stirring, and we get the same yellow wallpaper motif there. Then she sees the woman in the wall for the first time. She sees that it's a woman. She recognizes the woman, and she hears these really warm major chords, which is such a huge musical departure from where we were with the minor chords and the rapid fire. And then we hear, again, that garden motif, that freedom motif, when she sees the woman and she recognizes the woman. She says, I know you, and I'm going to get you free. Then Jenny comes in, she starts touching the wallpaper. Charlotte tells her to get out. She begins having these thoughts that kind of show up out of nowhere, that are very kind of disjointed in the middle of the scene. She has a scene, she has this sudden accented chord, which is made up of the wallpaper notes. She has this sudden waltz that comes in out of nowhere. Then suddenly in the middle of her conversation with John, completely unrelated, the 5/8 theme comes back again. I promise I'll free you. She's trying to free this woman in the wall. She has all of these little thoughts that come out as interjections. So instead of full songs like John Knows Best or the Wallpaper Song, now we're getting these fragments as her consciousness starts to become more fragmented and confusing. Then she finds out she only has a week left in the room, and rather than, unlike before when she wanted to get out of the room, now that she's discovered this woman in the wall, she doesn't want to leave the woman. She wants to free the woman, get the woman out of the wall. So when she finds out that she has 7 days, she sings, I promise I'll free you, promise I'll free you. 7 days I have, 7 days I have, 7 days I have, 7 days I have, 7 days! And it's the highest note she's hit so far in the show, is that E flat. And then we have this chord, which is this very dissonant chord. It's kind of a B flat 7 with a flat 9 without the 5th, and then over D, and then instead of with a minor 7th, it's a major 7th. So it's just this really weird chord that in a kind of dissonant and loose way leads us into the E flat minor that we're about to land in. So that chord comes back as we count down the days. And then the other thing that comes back is the entire rest of the score. So we kind of wanted to show Charlotte's spiral into insanity at this point. And if you think about a spiral, you start, say, at the north, and then you go to the east, and then you go south, and then you go to the west, and you're hitting these 4 points. Then you make a smaller circle inside of that one that also hits all 4 points, but it hits them faster because the circle is smaller. And then you have the same thing with an even smaller circle. So that's kind of what we wanted to do here. In a spiral, you get north, east, south, west, north, east, south, west, northeast, southwest, north, until you hit that like singularity at the middle. So, in our score we have John Knows Best, the Wallpaper Song, Long Yellow Night. John Knows Best, the Wallpaper Song, Long Yellow Night. John Knows Best, the Wallpaper Song, Long Yellow Night. I can't say. John Knows Best, the Wallpaper Song, Long Yellow Night. I can't say that, but we're hitting each one of these songs faster and faster as her sanity begins to fragment. So we start with this reference to John Knows Best. John says we're lucky. John is a physician. John knows best. There's that chord again. And then here, this chord again, which is the counting down the days chord. 6 days! Outside everything is green. 5 days! Then we have the Wallpaper Song again. This waltz again. So peculiar, artistic sin. These are lines that she said in the Wallpaper Song. Then we have the counting down the days chord again. 4 days, and it's basically the same thing. We go through the score in these little fragments separated by the counting down the days chord. And we only have fragments of each lyric, so instead of something is stirring, something is scratching, we just have stirring, scratching, clawing, free you, creeping, 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 creeping. And then 2 days, this is the last time she sings this high note, 2 days, up there on that G flat, and instead of this chord, to count down the days, we're building the tension, we're building the urgency, so we move this note up to there, and we move this note up to there, so then we have this, which is a very similar chord, but just has that slightly heightened tension and anxiety. And then here, she can't sing anymore because she begins pulling pieces of the wallpaper off with her teeth because she's so desperate to free this woman in the last 2 days. So we have this like urgent repeating left hand with the Yellow Wallpaper theme on top, and then this rising bass line. So we get this like and it all builds crescendo, 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 crescendo to fortissimo. And this totally like dissonant thing at the bottom of the piano just feels like it doesn't even feel like music, it just feels like a train rushing at you. And it ends with her saying, not singing, 1 day. Then there's a blackout. And we hit this accented E flat down here, and then basically it just dissolves into chaos using the 5 notes of the Wallpaper theme, just played like completely out of time, crescendoing, speeding up, crescendoing, speeding up, and then we get this final. And that was all in the black. And then the lights come up, and her dress is the color of the wallpaper. The bed sheets are the color of the wallpaper. The curtains are the color of the wallpaper. Everything has been consumed by the wallpaper. And she's standing there, beaming with relief. And we hear this. Which is really weird. It's this like very lovely major sound. The other thing about it is that we've basically gone through this whole show in either E flat minor or E flat major. And in E flat minor and E flat major, relative to E flat, if E flat is the key center, this is the 5th note of the scale, the major 7th note, the flat 6th note, the like sharp 6th note, and the major 3rd. So it's all of these like relative to E flat minor, for example. Those are some really dissonant notes. However, now we go down a semitone. We've been in E flat the whole time, E flat major or E flat minor. Now we go down a semitone to D major, and because we're lowering that semitone, There's something really warm and stable about it. And now that we're in D major, now those 5 notes, those same 5 notes, are much more, fit much better in the key. We've got, there's that B flat to D, which is the flat 6th note to the 1st note, which is part of the minor 4th chord, which is a very like beautiful and warm resolution. And then this is the natural 6th to the 7th to the 4th, which is part of the 4-5-1. There's some music theory jargon for you, but suffice it to say that these notes, which were super dissonant in the key of E flat, have now become part of a really warm and beautiful resolution, which leads to D major in a very like warm and beautiful way. So these very scary notes have suddenly become kind of comforting and nostalgic and beautiful. And over top of this, we see Charlotte standing there beaming. We get these lovely warm major chords. We get these, the garden theme again, the freedom theme coming again, only now we're in D major instead of E flat major, but it's still the same motif, relatively. And then we have John come in, see her, and go, "Oh my God, what have you done? Quick, somebody call the sheriff or call a doctor, call anyone." And then Charlotte ends with a quote, which is, "I'm all out of the wall now, John, and you can never put me back." So our interpretation of the original text is that the author dies by suicide. And the author of the story actually in real life did die by suicide. So we believe that that is what the text is representing, which is quite heavy. But in this way, we want to show that in a really oppressive patriarchy, the only way for relief is, the only way for freedom is this. Which is why we should transform the society, and we should not be committing suicide, because things do get better. And anyways, it's a pretty like dark and intense 10 minutes. Feel free to listen to the whole thing at the link down below if you want to. And if you are experiencing any sort of mental health issues, mental illness, there are lots of amazing resources available online if you do a quick Google search. So I hope that you get the help that you need. Yeah, thank you for watching this. I hope this was like interesting and / or informative. I'm gonna be doing more weekly updates like this throughout the year, hopefully, if people are interested in them. So definitely stick around for those. Yeah, thank you. See you soon.